them, but otherwise, Jerry, you can take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and good evening, everybody, world travelers.
I see me in there.
This evening, am I getting a request from somebody? So this evening, we're going to be traveling to Alaska and the Yukon, and the hopes is we'll be able to see northern lights by the time we get up there, the kind which are displayed here in this first photo. So these northern lights result from eruptions on the sun, solar flares, and this generates bursts of ionized hydrogen and helium atoms, which come streaming down, and they are funneled by the Earth's magnetic field into the northern region. So these bursts of ions excite the upper atmosphere, and these are quite high in general, typically 50 to 90 miles above the surface. So in order to see them, we need essentially three things to be satisfied. We need an active sun generating solar flares. We need to be on the right place or in the right place on Earth. And we need good weather, clear skies. So this illustrates the Earth's magnetic field in 3 dimensions. It's as if there were a giant bar magnet down here in the center of the Earth. That's not quite the case, but the magnetic field is like that. And this is a 2-dimensional representation of the magnetic field. This effective bar magnet in the center of the Earth is not lined up exactly with the axis of rotation, but is tilted by a few degrees as shown here. Now, this is what the Earth's magnetic field would look like if it were in outer space all by itself. But that's not the situation because we have the sun nearby, and continually blowing out from the sun is a solar wind, and from time to time the flares. So this has the effect of pushing on the magnetic field and distorting it. So that part of the Earth's magnetic field closest to the sun is pushed in or compressed, and that part of the magnetic field opposite the sun is stretched out or expanded. Another artist's view of the same thing with the sun off to the left, compression in the direction of the sun, expansion in the direction away from the sun. Now, fortunately, we are very fortunate that we have this magnetic field, because the magnetic field acts as a shield. Most of the solar wind is deflected away from the Earth and never makes it down to the surface or into our atmosphere. It's only when we have solar flares, as indicated here, that some of the excited ions make it through the magnetic field and are funneled down into this region in the north or this region in the south. This is where we can see the northern lights. Up here in the north, we would see the aurora borealis. Down in the south, we would see the southern lights or the aurora australis. So looking at a map of the Earth itself, the region indicated here in green is that part of the descending solar wind and ionized particles, in which we can see, frequently at least, the northern lights. So you see here in Iceland, that's a good place to be, or a good deal of Canada, or up here in Alaska as well. Now, several years ago, I was on a tour of Iceland, sponsored by Sky and Telescope magazine. We were there for about a week. And during that week, we were in a good location. The skies were clear, but the sun was exceptionally quiet. And we essentially saw nothing, almost no northern lights at all. So in our trip up north this evening, hopefully we'll have better luck. So we're going to be going to this vicinity here, the Yukon, northern Canada, and over here into Alaska. So this is another map showing the same area. The second of our trips is going to take us to Whitehorse. This is the capital of the Yukon Territory. And another display here. Again, here is Whitehorse. We're also, when we go into Alaska, going up to Fairbanks, which is well situated to see these northern lights. Now, we're not going to be going to Dawson City, but I'll just point it out because I'll be mentioning it a little bit later. So on this trip, we're going to be going to Fairbanks and Whitehorse, regions in which, if all conditions are good, we should be able to see northern lights. So the first trip I'll describe is one which occurred back in late August into September of 2012. This was a 4-week trip altogether. And in this trip, we're going to be traveling by train, airplane, bus, ferry boat, and automobile. So we're going to have a variety of transportation methods. I give credit to Barbara Freeman. She was a high school classmate of mine, and she did almost all the planning, made arrangements for almost all the details. This is a trip which she had been arranging for several years, in fact, and problems kept coming up preventing the trip. But in 2012, I was able to join her, and we went on the trip together for 4 weeks. So since Barbara lives in Oregon, we're going to begin the trip out here in Salem, Oregon, capital of the state. So in the map here, this is Salem. We're going to start by train heading north. We'll cross the Columbia River into Washington, going up into British Columbia, and in Vancouver, we're going to switch from our train to a plane. We're going to then start flying north out of Vancouver. So according to the map here, let's see, here is Vancouver, and we start flying here. Plan is to fly up to Prince Rupert, which is, and I'm having trouble getting my cursor out here. So Prince Rupert is right here. This is where we are going to be getting on the ferry, and we're going to be heading up north through the Inland Passageway here, past Juneau, the capital, and past Haines, and all the way up here to as far as we can go. At Haines, we're going to get off the ferry. We're going to get a rental car, and we'll be driving up the road indicated here in red and going up to Fairbanks, where we're hoping to see the northern lights, of course. So this shows the Inland Passageway. So by ferry, we're going to be starting in Prince Rupert, BC, heading north. We're going to be going all the way up to Skagway, right here. This is a distance of more than 400 miles. Now, the way Barbara arranged this trip, she wanted to see everything along the way, so we did not stay on the ferry when it was going at night. So we would get off at night and stay in various towns along the way, travel only during daylight hours. So as we're proceeding north, we're going to be stopping in Ketchikan, be stopping in Petersburg, be stopping in Juneau, the capital of Alaska, and be stopping in Haines. This is a misspelling. This should be Haines, not Maines. And then finally up to Skagway, as far as we can go. So here we go. So here we are in Salem. Here comes our train, fairly early in the morning. Here it is. And this is the interior of the train, quite comfortable. So this is Barbara, my traveling companion, and she's got her camera here ready to take some quick pictures. Crossing the Columbia River into Washington State, then up through Washington to Vancouver, and then on the airplane. Here we are on the plane. And as we proceed north, I'm sitting on the left side. I'm looking down at the coastal mountain range. So since it's late August, there's not a lot of snow left on the mountains, but there's still some up near the summit. So this is the view I have as we're heading north. Fairly good view of the glacier here, a river of ice, which is slowing down. Now, as we are approaching Prince Rupert, we get an announcement from the pilot telling us Prince Rupert is in the fog. The plane cannot land there. So instead, we are diverting about 90 miles to the east to Terrace. And we can look down, we can see a river here. This is the Skeena River. So after we land in Terrace, we're going to take a bus back along the Skeena River to get back to our destination, Prince Rupert. So we're coming down. See, the landing gear is down. Getting down closer, quite a bit of forest area below. And now we're on the surface from our Air Canada flight. And this is the door into the terminal. So by taking this picture, you see the door. Welcome to Terrace. You also see me in my reflection here. And you can see the mountains in the background with a little bit of snow up at the top. On the other side of the terminal, parking lot and some nice flower pots here. And now we're in the bus going along the Skeena River back to Prince Rupert. And here we are. This is where we're going to be staying the first night. This is a Pioneer Backpackers Inn. This is a hostel. So on this trip, we stayed in hostels fairly frequently. The advantage of staying in a hostel, first of all, is usually quite a bit cheaper than a hotel. And secondly, you meet lots of interesting people in the hostels. And I'll describe a particularly interesting person that we met in Fairbanks. So nearby garden. And then the next morning, we walked down to the ferry, and here's the fog again. So we're going to be going out on the Matanuska. Here are two gentlemen which are going to welcome us aboard, and they're going to collect our tickets and inspect our passports, because we're very quickly going to be going from Canada back into the US into Alaskan waters. So we're underway, and for a little while it's foggy, as you can see. But after an hour or two, the fog burns off and we can see things quite clearly. So now we're heading north, and this is what it looks like. And up ahead, we're approaching the first town we're going to be stopping at. So this is the view of the town. And this is a town which is visited by fairly large cruise ships, as you can see. This town has about 8,000 population. This is the town of Ketchikan. As the sign tells us, this apparently is Alaska's first city, and it's also the salmon capital of the world. So here's Barbara and myself by a totem pole. Ketchikan has the world's largest collection of standing totem poles. They are distributed throughout the city and also in 4 relatively nearby parks. Another totem pole, and in case you're wondering what's right at the top, because the view is kind of cut off, this is what's up here at the top of the totem pole. We went down to the waterfront. Here's some of these big cruising ships. I've been on a number of cruises, but I've never been on a really large one like this, which can hold many hundreds or even thousands of passengers. It's just a little bit too big for me. This is an inclined elevator, which takes us a couple hundred feet up from the water level to a higher level of the city. There's the view looking out over part of the city. And what do we find? More totem poles. One of the nearby parks, which of course features additional totem poles. And then the next day, we're back on the water again, heading north. And now we're coming up on our next town. This is the town of Petersburg, which has a population of around 7,000 or so. This is an aerial view of the town. And walking around town a little bit, this says Sons of Norway Hall. This town is sometimes called Little Norway because it was founded by immigrant from Norway, and there's a fairly large number of Norwegian immigrants who live in the town. The person we stayed with, a very friendly person. In fact, I should comment that almost everybody we met in Alaska were exceptionally friendly, very friendly people in Alaska. He wanted to drive us around a little bit and show us the sights in his car. He wanted to show off his car. So here we are for a quick drive around the town. And here's one of the inhabitants that lives, I guess, probably nearby, just crossing the road. This is the car he took us in. I've never seen a car like this before. This is a Miles. This is an electric car. It was manufactured in China. It uses lead acid batteries. It can only move at slow, as it says, low speed vehicle. Top speed, 25 miles an hour. We can't get out on the major highways, mostly just cruising around town. You can't buy a new Miles anymore because the company, the Chinese company, went bankrupt in 1913. But it was interesting to see it and ride around a little bit in this car. Another park. And then back on the water again, heading north once more. Looking back south, the direction we have come from. And this is the aerial view of our next town. This is Juneau. Juneau, the capital of Alaska. Per population of about 31,000 people live here. An interesting thing about Juneau is it is not connected to the rest of the state by any roads. The only way to get to Juneau is either to come in by boat or to come in by plane. You cannot drive to Juneau from elsewhere in Alaska. So here we are on the ground. Show you a few views of downtown Juneau. Here's a place where we had lunch one day. This is the Red Dog Saloon. As it says, it's a fabulous place. This is the most popular man-made tourist place and the oldest in Juneau. And we went in and we had a meal here. So this is what the interior looks like. Red Dog Saloon. Also, what we encountered down near the waterfront was a statue of this animal. This is an English terrier, English boxer terrier. This is Patsy Ann. And as the sign explains, in 1934, Patsy Ann was designated by the mayor as the official greeter for Juneau, because Patsy Ann would come down to the waterfront each time a steamship was coming in. She always knew when a ship was coming, even though she was deaf from birth. So here's a picture of the real Patsy Ann. And even though she couldn't hear, she always knew when the ships were coming and was down there every time to greet those getting off the ship. Oh, let's see, this is St. Nicholas Russian Orthodox Church, built back in the late 1800s. View of the interior. So we stayed a little while in Juneau and took a couple side trips. The first side trip we took was to go back about 45 miles or so to the Tracy Arm Fjord and travel about 30 miles up the fjord to see the Sawyer Glacier, which was descending into the sea. So we get on the boat and away we go. We are now in the fjord and we can start to see small icebergs, which have caved off of the glacier. And as you can see, the ice, pure ice in large quantities, is actually a light blue in color. And as we go up the fjord, we see water streaming down from the sides. It's sort of a little waterfall. And sort of an interesting display of the clouds. They're in layers or stripes, as you can see here. And we saw that several times up in Alaska, along the water or up in the mountains. And eventually we make it to the end of Tracy Arm, and here is the Sawyer Glacier coming down into the water. A closer view. So again, you notice the blue color of the ice. Here's the boat that got a little bit closer than we did. You don't want to get too close because large pieces can break off and fall into the water, which puts up a significant wave. Number of seals here are relaxing on the floating ice. Here's Barbara. And this is a calving event in which chunks break off and fall into the water. We saw that happen several times while we were there. Okay, now we're on our way back to Juneau, and we're just looking up some of the side valleys out of the fjord, which look kind of mysterious with the fog and the clouds in the area. And then we're back in Juneau, and then we take another side trip to the north, just 12 miles. We've gone up to see the Mendenhall Glacier. This is the visitor center there. And from these windows, you can or used to be able to get a pretty good view of the glacier. The problem is the glacier has been receding. It has receded, in fact, 2.5 miles since the mid 1700s. So this is the view from the visitor center, and yet the glacier quite a distance off and quite a walk to get there. Another view of that same glacier, the Mendenhall Glacier, 12 miles north of Juneau. Okay, back on the water again and heading north. And here's the next port that we stop at. This is Haines. This is the home of Fort William Seward. This was constructed about 1905 or so, was decommissioned in 1946. It was an army fortress. This is an aerial view of Haines, the population of about 1,700 or so. And we stayed here for a couple days. And this is either our hotel here, or I don't think so. I think our hotel is actually behind these trees on this road. So that's where we were. Getting off the boat, walking down the dock. We have some nice flower baskets along the way. Close-up of one. Here's the hotel that we stayed in Haines. So I had a room up here on the second floor, maybe this one or around the corner. And this was the view out of my window one sunny morning. And this is the flag that's flying at the hotel. This is the Alaska state flag. Can't quite see the whole thing here because of the wind, but this is what the flag looks like. It consists of what's called an asterism, a collection of stars that make a pattern. So here you see the Big Dipper. This makes up part of the Great Bear, constellation Ursa Major. And up here is the North Star Polaris. So if you're familiar with Big Dipper, these two stars down here in the bowl, often called the pointer stars, because if you draw a line between them, that line goes right up to Polaris, a good way to find Polaris. Now, this is a little bit misleading, because it kind of implies that Polaris is probably the brightest of all these stars, since it's the biggest. That's not the case. Some of the stars in the Dipper are in fact brighter than Polaris. Polaris is just medium bright, and sometimes a little hard to find if you have some light pollution. But this is the Alaska state flag. The view of Haines. This tells us that there was a centennial in Haines back in 2010, so we've missed it by 2 years. This is the view looking out to the west, and you can see a lot of mountains here. This is a part of the Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve, which you see, which is pretty much due west of Haines. And that's indicated here in this map. So here we are in Haines, right here. And over here you have Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve, which is all this area, some 5,000 square miles. Now it's going to be in Haines that we're going to leave the ferries and pick up our rental car. And we're going to be driving out of Haines on Highway 7. But before we do that, we're going to go up and visit Skagway, which is the very end of this inland passageway. And, well, even before we do that, it would be nice to have a look at Glacier Bay National Park. If you were in Glacier Bay, right down in here, it would look like this, which is quite scenic, quite spectacular, but we don't have the time to do that, go down by boat and see it. So instead, we're going to see it from the air. So we've made arrangements with the pilot. Here's his feet down here. I never got a good photograph of Paul, the pilot, but this is his wife, Amy, back here, who drove us out to the airport just 3 miles or so from downtown Haines. And this is what we're going to go flying in. This is a Bush Hawk XP. Its name is November 570 Bravo Charlie. And it holds 5 people, including the pilot. So the pilot plus 4 passengers. Now, I used to fly a Cessna 172 and also a 182. And they had much, much smaller wheels than this plane does. So this has big, gigantic wheels so it can land in rather rough terrain. So let's see, here's Barbara over here. So she and I are going up. 2 other passengers are going up. One last look at these big wheels. And we're in the plane, we're on the taxiway, and we are ready to go. And here we are. We're up in the air. Here's our airport from which we just left down here. So we took off going this way, made a U-turn, heading back to the west. So we are climbing up. It was rather cloudy that day, and I was afraid the trip would get canceled because of clouds. But in fact, it didn't. This little river coming down looks kind of milky in appearance. That's because the glaciers have ground up some of the rocks into a fine powder. So from time to time, you see this milky appearance in some of the streams. Inside the cockpit, this is the GPS display. Let's see, the plane is here. You can see mountains on either side. We are heading almost due west magnetic to 69 degrees. We're flying at 115 knots. That's 130 miles an hour. And we're at an elevation of what, 1,159 feet above sea level. Few more instruments, still going, well, 267 degrees magnetic, still 115 knots. And we're burning 14.8 gallons of fuel per hour. Sounds like a lot, but we carry quite a bit. Temperature, cylinder temperature, 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Exhaust gas temperature, about 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Oil pressure and temperature look good. Left fuel tank is 3/4 full. Same for the right fuel tank. So we're in good shape. So we keep going. So looking out the window again, as we climb, this is our view. In flying into Glacier Bay National Park. Get further in, we see we're up higher. Further into the taller mountains, we see more snow. And occasionally green areas like this. And here's our first glacier, a river of ice coming down. There are over 1,000 terrestrial glaciers on the land in this park. Another glacier. Yet another glacier. And again, we see these layered or striped cloud pattern. And again, notice the blue color of the ice up here on the side of the mountain. Here we see a glacier coming down out of the clouds and into the bay. Another region where we see that milky appearance once again. Yet another glacier. So I didn't get a good picture of Paul, our pilot, but here it says left hand. And here's his chin. This glacier, not only do you see the white ice coming down, but you can see a lot of darker areas, which are soil or ground up rocks, which are being carried along by the ice. Glacier is very abrasive, and so it's removing the top layer of rocks and soil continually as it moves along. And our tour is coming to an end, so we're going to leave the park. To do that, we got to fly over this pass. You know, I'm sitting here in the co-pilot seat, and it didn't look like we could make it because we were fairly low. Pass was still quite a bit above us, but in fact, we did. We made it with a few inches to spare. So going over the top of the pass, we can see down on the other side, and it looks like this as we descend. And coming back towards our airport, this is Haines again. And here's our airport at which we're going to land. So we're bringing our plane around to land on this runway. This is runway 8, 4,000 feet in length. And just getting ourselves lined up, ready to land and safely back on the ground again, with 3,000 feet of runway left to go. Okay, this is the end of the line. This is the end of the Inland Passageway. This is, or was, a very, very busy place back around 1898. This is where the prospectors came during the Klondike Gold Rush. And they came by the thousands. When it was busiest, maybe 1,000 per week would show up here. They would come up here by boat, and then they would get on the land, and then they would have to start walking. and it was still 500 more miles to the gold fields. So they have a long trip, long ways to go. But here we go. This is, let me get my numbers here. This is the city of Skagway, the town of Skagway has a population of 1,200. And so I'm just showing you a few scenes that we see from the street. If you want to buy something in Skagway, here's the Skagway Bazaar, where you can buy popcorn, that's always good. Reindeer sausage, good. Birdhouses, ostrich leather, all kinds of good things. This is part of the National Historic Park. This is the railroad building. To help the prospectors get to the gold fields between 1898 and 1900, they built in a narrow gauge steam railroad to help the prospectors get up to the gold fields. And this is in commemoration of that. And just nearby, you can buy tickets to ride on that railroad, which we did. So inside, we bought the tickets for the White Pass and Yukon route. And this is what it consisted of. This is Skagway. And the original route the prospectors would take would go from Skagway all the way up to Whitehorse in the Yukon. So they go up over the White Pass, about 3,000 feet above sea level, and then come up to, they would go along Bennett Lake, which is a big, long, narrow lake here, car cross, and then up to Whitehorse. I might mention that in the town of Bennett, on the shores of Bennett Lake, the grandfather of our current president, this would be Frederick Trump, made his first fortune right there in Bennett. He built the Arctic restaurant and hotel and brothel, and he made quite a bit of money from the miners passing through that area. So what we're going to do is we're going to get on a bus. We're going to go up to Carcross, turn around, come back by the train, and back to Skagway. So it's very scenic. As you can see here, quite an engineering feat to put this in just a couple years. So that's what the route looks like. First, we are going to take a bus up to Carcross. This is our bus. And we're on the way. This is Bennett Lake. And here we got a couple black bear crossing the road. Here they are. More of Bennett Lake. And here we are at Carcross. And this tells us that we are, what, 67.5 miles from Skagway. So now we're going to go back by train. So here's our train. Here's Barbara waiting for me. She's afraid the train's going to take off without me. But I wanted to run back and get a picture. The train first, and I got back on in time because here we are inside the train. So this is what it looks like. And I took a few pictures as we're going back to Skagway, little waterfall across the lake. Trestle. So we are winding our way. Our route to get us back is going to be along here. That's where we're descending to. And we're getting down near sea level again, little river running by. And at this point, we're going to switch from ferry boat to the automobile. So the last 2 weeks of our trip, we covered over 2,000 miles. And I don't have time to show all of that to you this evening. We're going to stop at Fairbanks, which is the northerlymost point, where hopefully we can see the northern lights. And that's still 640 miles by car from Haines. The part I won't be showing you, went down to Denali National Park, where the tallest mountain, Denali, is located, tallest mountain in North America, 20,300 feet above sea level. We went down to Valdez, which is the end of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Homer was the southernmost point back to Anchorage to fly out. So here we are, we're in the car. We're just leaving Haines, where you can get some, well, where we stayed a few days. So we're now on Highway 7. So you see the Alaska flag here again. And as we leave Haines, we have to drive along a mountainous area, which is quite scenic, as you can see here. And we pass up over the Haines Highway summit, a little more than 1,000 meters above sea level, about 3,500 feet above sea level. And we continue going. Let's see, we stop so Barbara can take some pictures. And now we're entering Yukon again for a second time, this time by car. And a little vegetation along the side of the road. Here's an interesting thing that we encountered along the road, Our Lady of the Way Catholic Church. As the sign explains, this was built back in 1954 by a Catholic priest from an old Quonset hut, which had been used by the Army during construction of the Alaska Highway. And as it says, it has the distinction of being the most photographed church in the Yukon. That, of course, was an invitation to take a picture. So here's a church, Our Lady of the Way. The interior of the church, it was pretty clear they don't have a very large congregation. And then we continue heading towards Fairbanks. And then before we get to Fairbanks, we encounter this big pipe coming up out of the ground. Here's Barbara posing on it. This pipe is 48 inches in diameter. It is 800 miles in length. This is the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. And I was planning to climb up on top of it, but then I encountered this sign which says, please don't climb on the pipeline. So that scared me off, so I didn't climb on it. So this pipeline, 800 miles in length, it carries oil from the northern part of Alaska and the Arctic Ocean, on the shores of the Arctic Ocean, all the way down here to Valdez. This PS that you see are the pumping stations. There are 12 of them, and when they're going at full capacity, they can pump 2 million barrels of oil per day at a speed of 7.5 miles per hour along the pipeline, taking 4.5 days for the oil to travel from the Arctic shore all the way down here to Valdez. So time for lunch. So let's see, for lunch, it looks like we're going to have a ham sandwich, maybe mustard, salsa, and pickle relish, some fruit, and maybe a Diet Coke. And as we were enjoying our lunch, as Barbara was enjoying her sandwich and having an orange, this butterfly came along, and it was just incredibly friendly and was extremely interested in the orange. So Barbara shared some orange with the butterfly, and he stayed around for quite some time enjoying his segment of the orange and didn't really want to leave for quite a while. Very friendly fellow, but eventually he did. And we continued on. So here we are, aerial view of Fairbanks, also almost 31,000 population, located about 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle. Has the highest population for any city in the interior of Alaska. So here's where we stay. This is Billy's Backpackers Hostel. Quite an interesting place. And while staying there, as I said, you can meet interesting people. We did. We met this fellow who you see pictured here. This is Daryl Gardner. He joined us for dinner the first night we were there. He was a registered nurse. He lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he'd chosen a very interesting project or hobby. He wanted to travel by human power alone, nothing mechanical, nothing motorized, from the Mexican border to the Arctic Ocean, distance of about 6,000 miles. So he had off, he worked as a nurse. He had 1 month off per year. So during that month, he would start down at the Mexican border and go as far as he could. And when his month was up, he'd go back to work. And the following summer, he'd come back to where he had left off and continue on with the trip. And he did this for 9 years until at the end, he ended up on the shores of the Arctic Ocean. And the very day he ended up on the Arctic Ocean, a bush pilot came, picked him up, flew him back to Fairbanks, and he came down to Billy's hostel where we met him. We met him the very day he had completed his project. And he had quite an interesting story to tell us, obviously. A few other things I'll show you quickly in the vicinity of Fairbanks. They have a nice botanical garden with all kinds of flowers. I just have a sample here of a few of them. They also have a very interesting mathematical garbage can. Teaches you the power of the multiplication tables and how you can count up all the dots without having to count each one individually. We also took another side trip of about 60 miles to the northeast. And so we're driving up there. And as we drive up, we're going up in altitude. And we see more and more fall colors until we are up there. And here we are in the fall colors. This is a hot spring area, but we've not come up for the hot springs. We've come up to see what's inside this building. This is the Aurora Ice Museum, and inside of it, the temperature is 25 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's 1,000 tons of ice. And that ice has been carved into all kinds of sculptures. And here's a little bit of what it looks like inside. We have a couple jousting knights. Almost everything is made from ice in here. This is the Aurora Ice Bar. And to go in, you have to buy a ticket. You can buy the cheap tickets or the more expensive tickets. We bought the more expensive tickets because with those tickets, she'll pour you a drink in glasses, of course, made from ice. So a little bit more. Again, the ice bar. And here's Barbara. I think they were serving apple teenies that day. So here's Barbara enjoying her apple teeny. And outside again, she's looking pretty happy. And we get to keep the glasses. Of course, they don't last too long because they melt. But, it was an interesting experience. Before they melt, of course, you can use them for drinking anything like water. So what about the Northern Lights? Well, we were in the right place. I heard that the sun was reasonably active, but while we were there in the Fairbanks area, it was cloudy and rainy every night. We did not get to see the Northern Lights up there. And as we proceeded south, it stayed rainy and cloudy, and we never got a chance to see the Mount McKinley, tallest mountain in the North American continent, because it was all shrouded in clouds. But we didn't give up. We went back again 18 months later. This time we went to Whitehorse in the Yukon, once again hoping to see the Northern Lights. So again, Barbara comes along, and this time her friend Libby Moore comes along, who is a high school math teacher. So we took a tour arranged by Northern Tales, and this was done in February of 2014. Now, Northern Tales, I was very impressed by the tour that we got because I thought it was incredibly cheap. They're still in business, and this tour is now $1,449, which includes a hotel for 4 nights and lots of other things. So they take you out every night, about 30-minute drive out of Whitehorse down to a wide open field to look for the northern lights, get general sightseeing during the day, take you to a place where you can do dog sledding for half a day. I take you out to see a Yukon Wildlife Preserve for half a day. And you get to participate in the Yukon Sourdough Rendezvous Festival, which was taking place at that time. And they had snow sculptures, stage performances, various contests, a parade, and so forth. So we went back. So we flew from Portland to Vancouver, changed planes. Now we're going from Vancouver to Whitehorse. It's winter time. So looking down, we see a lot more snow and ice below. Again, this is the coastal mountain range. So now we're coming down, and as we get down lower, we see a lot of forested area. And here we are in the tarmac in Whitehorse. And here's Northern Tales in their van to pick us up and take us into town. So here's the hotel they put us up in. This is the Best Western. This is the lobby inside the Best Western. We have this mounted policeman here to keep things under control. And a few views of the city streets. This town has a population of about 25,000, which is 70% of the people who live in the Yukon. So almost 3/4 of those living in the Yukon live in this town. So here's a statue of Prospector and his trusty pack dog. And another totem pole. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police were there. And I'm not sure what these moose are doing up here on the roof, but this is the Yukon River. So during the gold rush of 1898, this is where the prospectors would come, if they could get this far, get in the river and float downstream to Dawson City, which is near the gold field. So the river's almost all frozen over, just a little bit clear spot, which is still open. And here's a paddle boat, which is not used this time of the year. And let's see, here's the railway station in town. Those of you who are into dog sledding, they have the Yukon Quest 1,000-mile international sled dog race, which starts in Whitehorse, also ends in Whitehorse each year. You can think about participating in that. But right now we're going to go down and see some snow sculptures. Here's a few of them. There are quite a few. There was even a Michigan entry by Adam, Daniel, and Marco. This is theirs. I think this is supposed to be a pirate with his spyglass and his parrot, also with spyglass. They had a tent, quite a large tent, which was a little bit heated. So we had musical performances inside. People playing instruments, singing. And of course, dancing ladies. And outside, lots of far up north winter contests like axe throwing, chainsaw tossing, sled pulling, and so forth. If you get a little hungry and you would like something sweet, there is the Sugar Shack. And what she is doing, she's ladling out here maple syrup right out here on the ice. And it freezes it's very cold. Freezes very quickly in just a few seconds. So it's poured out on a wooden stick. And then almost immediately you can pick up the wooden stick and you can sample your maple syrup in solid form. It's very good. And of course, dog sledding. Part of our tour, they took us up to this site where they had the dogs. So here's one of them. Here's another one. This is Tootsie. And this is what, Kato. I was surprised. I was expecting the dogs to be quite a bit bigger, but these are not very large dogs. But what they lack in size, they have tremendous pulling power. So here are the sleds. These sleds have got to weigh a few hundred pounds. They're quite heavy. So getting the dogs all harnessed up. The dogs love this. When they see a group coming up, they all jump on top of their little houses and they bark. They're just barking furiously. Take me, take me. They love doing this. So this is the view from our sled. Little trouble at first because they're two dogs that don't like each other. And so eventually one gets taken away. So we started out with 6, but we ended up with just 5 dogs, but that turned out to be enough. So I guess with Barbara and me and the sled, we've got to have over probably 500 pounds of weight, and these dogs just take us right along at quite a swift speed. So we did probably 10 miles or something like that with a round trip, maybe more. Lots of fun. The only control you have is the brake. Brake on, brake off. That is it. And when you're not going, you must leave the brake on at all times because the dogs, once they sense that the sled can move, they'll take off. They just love running. We also spent a few hours out at a wildlife preserve, the Yukon Wildlife Preserve. And I'll show you, this is some elk, wood bison, thinhorn sheep, another sheep, and the Canada lynx. So the remaining question is, what about the northern lights? Did we see them? This is now my 3rd attempt to see the northern lights up far north. They should be good. And the answer is yes, we did see them. So when they took us out to the viewing area, about a half-hour drive from town, here they are. And we went out every night for several hours. And the lights can change in appearance and form rather quickly. Not just second by second, but minute by minute. The patterns can change. So here we are with the northern lights. So they would take, with the cameras they had on tripods, they would typically take about a 10-second exposure, which would end with a flash to catch us in the foreground. So we had to stand very still for 10 seconds till the flash went off. And then all we could see were spots in front of our eyes for a few seconds. So let's see, here's Barbara, here's me in the center, and then Libby. And of course, the lights in the background. So you can see the patterns are changing quite a bit. They have a tent where we can get warm because it's very cold out. And you can get coffee, tea, hot chocolate, and so forth. So I brought a cup of hot chocolate out. Here's another nice view. This is one, they had a couple warming tents. These are quite large tents. They got big barrel stoves burning inside, or wood burning to heat them up. So you can go in and get out of the cold whenever you're half frozen. Also had a couple outdoor bonfires going, as you can see over here. So these are all pictures that were taken during the time that we were there. We saw them several nights, especially strong one night. Here are the 3 of us again. Just Barbara and Libby. Yes, it was cold. And so here's the outdoor thermometer. The temperature is minus 30 degrees Celsius. So in Fahrenheit, that's about minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold. We're all wearing parkas. The parka I'm wearing is one that I used when I was up at either the North Pole or the South Pole. I forget which. That was one of my polar parkas. And the other two gals are wearing up parkas which they've rented up there in Whitehorse once they arrived. So the lights were very spectacular. It was well worth the trip coming up to see them. So just to end, I've just taken 3 or 4 other photos off the internet, some of the Northern Lights. If you go up with a fancy camera, good tripod, and willing to spend a lot of time trying different exposures and things, you can get some very nice pictures. So again, these lights are 50 to typically 90 miles above the surface of the Earth, way up in the upper atmosphere. Okay, well, that's my last slide that I'll be showing. Again, you see the Northern Lights over here, and I guess you can see a little bit of the Milky Way, our Milky Way galaxy right in here. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I guess if there are questions, Steve will be giving the questions to me.
Wow, that's an incredible photo right there. Someone a while back asked if the one picture was showing moss or was it just some sort of small plant?
I'm not sure which picture that was, but that must have been back in Alaska.
Yeah.
Didn't see any plants when we were up on Whitehorse because everything was covered in snow and ice.
And you went.
I showed a couple of pictures taken along the road as we were driving out of Haines. That wasn't moss; those were just standing plants along the side of the road. One had a lot of red leaves, and the other one had flowers. But I can't identify what type of plant either one of those was.
Jeff asked, what month were you traveling in? Was it, someone said this might have been February 2014. When was the time frame?
for the trip to the Yukon to White, yeah, that was February 24, excuse me, February 2014, in the winter when it's cold. Elevation of Whitehorse is also 2,200 feet above sea level. So that helps reduce the temperature a few degrees as well as being up quite far north.
Someone else asked, how do the Northern Lights look with under the naked eye? How does they compare?
Very bright at times. Yeah, very clear, very bright. I can remember walking out of the heating tent on one occasion where we'd been for maybe 15 minutes to warm back up and have some, I don't know, hot chocolate and cookies or something. And so there was light inside, so I wasn't dark adapted. I was used to the light in the tent. And as soon as I walked out the door, the outdoor, the sky was just ablaze with the Northern Lights at that time. Very easily seen, very bright, even though I wasn't yet dark adapted.
And again, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. I have one in the meantime is, do you know why the ice looks so blue?
Well, that's the color of ice.
Okay. I just haven't seen it.
Water in large quantities takes on this bluish color. So it has to do with the molecular structure of the ice and what frequencies of light are absorbed and reflected and transmitted through the ice. It has to do with atomic or molecular physics. But starting out with white light, which is a mixture of all colors, and letting it pass through the ice, what comes out on the other side of a thick slab of ice is blue bluish in color. I was in Mount Rainier on one occasion, and on the north side, they had the Paradise Ice Caves. So these are caves that go right into glaciers. We could walk back hundreds of feet. As we were walking back, the light that was coming down was filtered through the ice. It was just a glorious blue color as it came through our ceiling down to where we were. So that is the color of ice, or the actual color, light blue. Sky.
Rebecca asked, I always thought it had to be winter to see the northern lights, but you were hoping to see them in the summer. Are they more common in the winter because the nights are longer?
It can be easier to see them because the nights are longer. If you go too far north in the summer, then the nights are very short. So you may have just 2 or 3 hours, which is maybe dark enough to see them. But you certainly don't need winter for them to occur. All you need is an active sun with flares sending solar radiation towards the Earth. You need to be up far north where the sun's magnetic field funnels these energized ions down towards the upper atmosphere there, and you need clear skies. If you have those, you can have the northern lights. Of course, if it's daylight, you won't see them. So, but winter bites for you, you get up north, you may have 20 hours of dark in the winter, which always helps.
Sonia asked, do you know if the ions in the aurora are the same as or similar to ions generated by ionic air cleaners?
Well, the ions that are coming from the sun are primarily ionized hydrogen and helium atoms. So these ionic air cleaners, I doubt very much there's hydrogen or helium there. They probably use a high voltage to ionize the air and probably produce charged molecules of oxygen or nitrogen, I'm guessing. But I'm not really familiar with them.
Another person asked, was February the best season to see the northern lights in this area?
Well, again, it's good because the nights are very long, but there are certain times when the sun is more active. The sun goes through an 11-year cycle. So it goes from an active phase into a quiet phase. So during the active phase, there are more flares and things like that occurring on the surface, generating more northern lights. So that would be the time to go. Again, to have long periods of time during a viewing session. Going in the winter season is good because you have many hours in which to do your viewing. But you need to be aware that up north in the winter, it can get cold. So we had minus 30 degrees Celsius. It can get a lot colder than that. It can drop down 50, 60, 70 degrees below zero. So it was relatively warm for us, although we weren't quite used to temperatures that cold.
Someone else asked, does the breaking of glaciers, is it a really loud sound?
Yeah, yes, it does generate some sound, yes. I wouldn't call it real loud, but there is quite a bit of sound, which is generated. That's during this calving process in which they break off and then fall down in the water in front. It is noisy, yes.
And it looks like finally Megan asked, the sun is just heading into the active phase again, correct? So in a few years.
I believe, yeah, I think it is starting up. It's gone through the quiet phase. I think it's just starting to enter the next active phase. But it probably won't be most active for another 3 or 4 years. 3, 4, 5 years.
So
there can be solar flares at any time. You can see these lights at any time. It's just that during the quiet phase of the sun, they're relatively infrequent.
So next, Jerry has so many great shows that we usually ask a poll at the end to let people vote where we want to go next. So I'm going to put a poll up right now, and you can anonymously say your top choice of where this next event, this next journey with Jerry should venture. We've got 2 more islands, Hawaii and the Canary Islands. We've got the driest place in the world, Chile and the Atacama Desert. Got millions of penguins, the Antarctic Peninsula, and also large and historic telescopes throughout the USA. All right, so far 30 of 41 people have voted. If anyone else wants to vote, I'm going to close it up in probably about 10 seconds here. All right, 5 seconds. All right, I'm going to close it up. If anyone else wants to chime in, we actually have a very close race.
Looks like we got a tie here, so we need one vote at least.
Yeah, we if anyone wants to break the tie by voting, I'm not going to say what the options are, but one of those last 6 people want to vote. Can't have a tie.
Maybe this just means Jerry has to give 2 more talks.
Yeah, I know. Anyone else? Oh, all right. We had it change. I'm gonna end it now. So the winner was 2 more islands, Hawaii and the Canary Islands, had 11 votes, 32%. With 10 votes was millions of penguins, the Antarctic Peninsula. So it looks like the next show will be 2 more islands. All you penguin fans are gonna have to keep hanging on. But I just have a few brief announcements too before everyone signs off. There's a couple other great shows, WSU Planetarium shows coming up. So one is on November 19th at 7 p.m. There's going to be another show with another great friend of the planetarium, Mark Christensen, who did a talk earlier in the summer. But this one is going to go to Jantar Mantar. I don't know if I said that right. Observatory in India and explore other areas of India. So the RSVP for that, I just put in the chat. If you also go to the Wayne State Planetarium's website, you can sign up for that as well. Also this week is actually the WSU Alumni Week of Service. So if you want to volunteer from home, it's really easy. You can even volunteer for your favorite charity, write cards for hospitalized kids or seniors. You can also give blood or transcribe information for the Smithsonian. I just dropped the link for that in here too, but we're trying to accumulate as many at-home volunteer hours we can for Wayne State. And then lastly, I do have a special announcement. It is Jerry's birthday. So just want everyone to say happy birthday. Who's been doing these talks all summer. Happy birthday, Jerry, if anyone.
Well, that was a big secret. I don't know how that got out.
Hey, why is my so
Birthday.
happy birthday,
Jerry.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And many more.
Thank you.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
HiJ.com, and it's also my wife, Carolyn's birthday.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
So
That's
we
pretty
have the
neat.
same birthday date, not the same year, but the same date.
That's pretty neat.
happy birthday.
Forgot to mention there is one other event coming up. It's going to be an actual planetarium show. Megan, if you wanted to speak about what the kind of the topic is of that one.
Sure. We're getting back into virtual planetarium shows. We'll be doing them every 2 weeks. Initially, we're going to do them on a Thursday night and a Sunday afternoon. And if enough people are showing up Sunday afternoons, we'll keep doing that system, but we're not sure if that's a good time yet because that's new for us. So the first show will be on Thursday, November 5th. And Ethan is talking about black holes and the Nobel Prize this year, which went to several black hole researchers. And we have a lot of people here who study black holes and related compact objects. So it's a favorite topic here at Wayne State. So we're going to start back up with that one. And Steve put the link for the RSVP for the Thursday night show in. We will have the Sunday show posted soon, but at this point, we're still waiting to get the RSVP live for that one. So stay tuned.
I might just comment that one of the recipients of the Nobel Prize in Physics for 2020 was Andrea Ghez from UCLA, for the work she did in observing the black hole in the center of the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy. And she is giving a talk for the University of Michigan tomorrow, I think at 4:30. So it's a Zoom presentation, so you might get on the internet and check that out. Andrea Ghez tomorrow, 4:30, talking on